So before going to start the lesson, you have to know the meaning of these words. First one, pull down. Pull down here means to bring to a lower level. Then the next one, zip fastener. The meaning, a fastener used in clothing made up of two rows of teeth that are made to fit into each other by moving a slider. Then the next word, pin. Pin means attaching something, attach. Then pulled up, to bring to a stop or halt. Then whiskers, the hair growing on a man's face, especially on his cheeks and chin. Then muddy, covered with mud or wet soil. Then the last one, seal. Seal here means a specially designed piece of paper with glue on one side. So you have to know the meaning of all these words for a better understanding of the story as well, and at the same time you have to write down all the meanings of these words into your notebook and you have to by heart it. Okay, a very good morning to my dear students. Today we are going to move on to the first chapter in your supplementary reader, detective number 30, written by the writer L.M. Swenson. As you all know, a detective story is what? Yeah, detective story is something which is associated with investigating something. So here also we can find an investigation, but it is fictional. What do you mean by fictional? Yeah, fictional means imaginary. That means not real. Yeah, something which is only we can find in stories or something like that. So now we can look at the preface passage. I am going to read the preface passage. Listen. The famous five, Nancy Drew, the boy Sherlock Holmes, and Encyclopedia Brown have something in common. They all are fictional detectives who are children. Yet another young detective is the hero of this story. So now, when the story begins, the writer just introduced some important names of child fictional detectives. What are they? Nancy Drew, the boy Sherlock Holmes, Encyclopedia Brown. So these are all the detectives which you are closely familiar with, and the writer says that they are all fictional detectives. What do you mean by fictional detectives? Yeah, imaginary detectives who are children, and yet another young detective is the hero of this story. So the writer is introducing another child detective in this story. Now we can go to the story. So listen, I am going to read the first paragraph. John stood looking up and down the street. He was unhappy. His friend Billy had gone to the dentist with his mother, and John could not think of anything interesting to do just by himself. So in the very first sentence itself, we come to know that John and Billy are intimate friends, and John could not do anything without Billy. In that way, they were they were intimate friends. John was unhappy as he could not think of anything just by himself. So when the story begins, we come to know that Billy, John's friend, went to dentist with his mother. Now we can move on to the next paragraph. Listen, I am going to read the paragraph. He pulled down the zipper fastener of his jacket As he did so, his fingers touched a metal badge pinned inside the jacket, and his face brightened. On the badge was written Detective number 30. I will play the detective, John said to himself. I will follow a thief. I can do that by myself, but who is there to follow? Now tell me, what do you mean by zipper fastener? Yeah, zipper fastener is actually a fastener used in clothing, made up of two rows of teeth that are made to fit into each other. Yeah, simply, yeah, something which we attached or which we used in clothes in order to make it opened. So then, as John was opening his jacket, his fingers touched a metal badge. Pinned means attached, so attached inside the jacket, and seeing the writings on the badge, his face was brightened. Yeah, there he found a badge written on it as detective number 30. So he said to himself that, yeah, he will follow a thief. He will follow a thief. He again says that he can do it by himself. But then the question remains, who is there to follow? Yeah, he has somebody to follow. So he asked himself, who is there to follow? Now listen, I am going to read the next part. Just then he noticed a car parking by the side of the road, and he saw a man getting out of the car. Now this was something. Then John noticed a car was parking by the side of the road, and he saw a man getting out of the car. So he said that that was something. That means, yeah, he decided to chase that person, the person who just got out of the car. Now listen, I am going to read the next part. The man waited for a moment, then walked up the street towards the small shop. John followed him, and when the man entered the shop, John was closely behind him. The man went to the corner of the shop where the telephone was. John bought a milk chocolate from the shop. If the man noticed him at all, he saw only a boy eating chocolate, and he did not know that the same boy was following him down the street. And wherever the man went throughout the street, John followed him. And not to realize the fact that John was actually following him, yeah, he just bought a chocolate and was eating it when he followed him, just to divert the man's attention, just to divert his doubt whether, yeah, John was following the man or not. So for that he played a trick. So for that purpose he just bought a milk chocolate, yeah, in order to divert the attention of the man. Now listen. The man went to his parked car and did something strange. He got in, started his engine, then pulled up the handbrake and got out, leaving his engine running. Looking about, he quickly walked up the path to Mr. Stone's big house and went around to the back of the house. So suddenly, the man went to the parked car and he got into the car, started the engine, stopped the handbrake, and started moving. And he walked up to the back side of Mr. Stone's house. Now listen. John watched very carefully. He was afraid to follow the man, but he wanted to see. On the street there were some big empty boxes. John crept into one of them. Through the cracks It was easy to see both the house and the car. He looked carefully at the license plate of the car. So John was very much afraid to follow the man. So he found another way. He crept into one of the big empty boxes on the street, and through the cracks in the big empty box in which he crept into, he could easily chase the man. Now listen. Suddenly the front door of the house opened and a man came out. But it was not the same man who had gone in. That man had a smooth face with a big nose, and he wore a hat. The man coming out had grey whiskers and wore a grey cap and was carrying a suitcase. Suddenly he noticed a strange thing. The front door was opened and a man came out, and it was not the same man who had gone in. And the man had a big nose, grey whiskers, and wore a grey cap and was carrying a suitcase. So these were the identification marks. Now listen, I am going to read the next part. It is not the same man, John said to himself. But just then the man passed close to his hiding place. John looked closely at him, and he was very surprised. The man ran to the parked car, jumped in, released the handbrake, and drove off. So he said the man was not the same man who had gone. When John looked at him closely, the man ran to the parked car and drove off. Suddenly he drove off. Then listen. John came out of his box and looked after the car, eyes and mouth wide open. Just then there came a call. Hi John, it was Billy. John ran towards him. Listen Billy, But Billy stopped him and said, Say John, I had ice cream and then I went to see the film Tarzan. What a beautiful film. That is the fourth time I have seen it. Then John came out of his box and followed the man in great surprise. But suddenly he was being interrupted by Billy, who had gone to the dentist with his mother. Even though John tried to reveal the things, Billy did not pay attention. Instead, he was saying his own things. When Billy spoke about the movie he had seen, John also loved the story, and he also developed a desire to watch the movie. Then listen, the boys became interested in the story of the film, and John forgot his own story. His own story means the strange finding of a strange man. So in that way they became interested in the story of the film, and John forgot his own story. Now listen, the next morning at breakfast, John was trying to think of some way to ask Daddy for some money. He wanted to see the movie Tarzan. So then John was looking for some ways. John was actually interested in watching the movie Tarzan. So he was actually looking for some ways to get some money from his father to see the movie. Now listen. Daddy, who was reading the paper as he ate his breakfast, looked across at Mother. Some people broke into Mr. Stone's house yesterday. The family were away. A lot of silver and jewelry were taken. They seem to have carried the things away in a suitcase. Mr. Stone is offering a reward. So John's father, while he was reading the newspaper, shared the news about the robbery which happened in Mr. Stone's house yesterday and also was speaking about the reward they are planning to offer for finding the thief to mother. Okay, then listen. John laid down his spoon. Would the reward be big enough for me to see Tarzan, Daddy? Yeah. Soon, John came out with an innocent question that whether it would be big enough for him to see the movie Tarzan. Then listen. Don't be silly, son, answered Daddy. You don't understand. Mr. Stone is offering a reward to anyone who can help him find the gang that stole his things. Then the dad was somewhat angry and said, Don't be silly, my son. Yeah, Mr. Stone is planning to offer a reward to anyone who could help him to find the gang or find the thief. Now listen. Yes, I know, said John, but it wasn't a gang. It was just one man, and he had a big nose and a hat when he went in. And when he came out, he had grey whiskers and a cap. Then John shared the things he knew about the thief to his father. He said that no, it was not a gang, but it was just one man, and he also shared some of the identification marks too, like a big nose, grey whiskers, and a grey cap also. Now listen, I'm going to read the next part. Look here, son, said Daddy. If you really know anything about this, tell me. So John told him about detective number 30 following the man and hiding in the box and everything. So then the father prompted his son to reveal the things he knew about them to him. Then John started saying the entire things right from the beginning when he found the badge, detective number 30, to the last moment when he chased them by sitting in a big empty box having so many cracks. Okay, now listen. Well, said Daddy, I think I would better call the police and tell them what you saw. Then the father remarked that, yeah, it is better to call the police and let them tell whatever you actually knew or whatever actually you saw. Now listen. Will I get the reward, Daddy? Asked John, but his father was already on the telephone. John again asked about the reward, but Dad did not answer as he was already on a phone call. Then listen. In a very short time, a car stopped in front of the house and two big policemen came into the house. John felt a little afraid of them at first, but one of them smiled such a broad smile that John smiled back. So suddenly, policemen came and John was very afraid of them. But later, he smiled at them when one of them had given him a broader smile. Okay, now listen. So you are the young man who is going to help us catch this thief, are you? Asked the policeman. Tell us everything you saw. So John told his story again. Then the policeman asked him for all the possible information he knew. And John started telling the entire happenings once again. Now, you didn't notice what kind of a car it was, did you? It will be easy for us to pick up that car now, said the policeman. If we find it, we shall want you to come down to the station. Then they said that it would be easy for them to chase the vehicle as he shared the license number. They added that, he should come to the station if they chased the car. The policeman hurried away, and John, seeing Billy across the street, called, Say, Billy, do you want to go down to the police station with me? I'm going to get a reward big enough for us to go to the cinema and see Tarzan. So then the policeman left. Then he called Billy, who was standing across the street, and asked him would he like to accompany him to the police station, as he is going to get a big reward to see the movie Tarzan. In the afternoon, Daddy drove up and called for them. The boys were a little afraid when they entered the police station. An inspector was sitting behind a desk. There were half a dozen officers in uniform, and at one side stood a few other men. Then in the afternoon, they together with Daddy, that means Billy and John, together with Daddy, went to the police station. There were several officers on one side, and at another side there stood a few other men. Now listen. Which one of you boys is the detective? Asked the inspector. We both are, answered Bill. That is, not real ones, of course, but play ones. John is number 30 and I am number 18. But it was John who followed the man yesterday. Then policeman asked about the detective. Billy said everything. Yeah, that they are imaginary detectives. Then when the inspector realized that it was John who followed them yesterday, he asked to John to identify the man he followed yesterday, pointing at the men stood on the other side. Well, John, said the inspector, look at those men and see if the man you followed yesterday is there. So in that way, the policeman asked John to identify the man whom he followed yesterday, pointing at the men stood on the other side. Yes, he is, answered John. It is that man with the big nose. Then listen. So that is the man you followed, is it? But you said the man who came out of the house had grey whiskers and a grey cap. Yes, he did, but they are the same man, said John. Then the policeman asked if that was the man he followed yesterday. Look, he did not have grey whiskers and grey cap. Then how he would be the one whom he followed yesterday? Then John said that both are same. Now, how are you going to prove it? This man says his car was stolen yesterday and he found it later. Then the police said that there were contradictions in their saying also. So how could he prove that both were same? John grew suddenly shy. You tell them, Billy. Billy pulled his hand from his pocket and showed some small blue seals. You see, it is this way. We try to see how many people we can follow, and the one who follows the most people wins. I have these blue seals and John has red ones. We try to stick one of these seals on the man we follow. That is what John did yesterday when he went close to the man in the shop. Then John turned shy and asked Billy to prove it. Then Billy, after taking some blue seals from his pocket, showed the policeman that, yeah, it is through this they can prove it. Billy said that he had blue seals and John had red ones, and they tried to stick one of these seals on the man whom they intend to follow. This was what John did yesterday with the man. Then listen, I am going to read the next part. The officers roared with laughter. What happened then? Asked the inspector. John continued the story. I thought it was a different man too, coming out of the front door. But when he passed near me, I saw the red seal on his coat that I had stuck. It may still be there. The two boys ran over behind the big-nosed man. Yes, there it is, cried Billy, and the officers went up and looked too. So suddenly, Inspector turned curious to know how it would be. John continued that he too thought that it was a different one. But as he passed him, he saw the red seal on his coat which John had stuck there, and identified that both were same person. So in that way, Billy and John ran over the big-nosed man and found that the seal was still there and identified that both were same. The children seem to have caught you, said the inspector. Now tell us where the things are. Yes, they have caught me, said the big-nosed man. But you policemen would never have caught me without the children. They have got brains. Then the officer said that children had caught you, and the big-nosed man said that yes, they had caught me. And he added that you policemen would never have found me without them. So they have got, or they are brilliant. They have got brains, or they are brilliant. Okay. Now listen. Well, come on boys, let us go, said Daddy. Do I get the reward, Daddy? Asked John. You will surely get it, said a grey-haired gentleman. He took out $100 note and gave it to John. I am proud of such fine young neighbors, he said, shaking hands with the boys. So then they decided to leave. John reminded about the reward and got $100 from a grey-haired gentleman, and the gentleman proudly remarked that he was proud of such fine young neighbors. So in that way the story ends. So we can clearly say that the story is all about child detectives. Yeah, the story is about John and Billy, how they managed to find the thief in their own way. So I hope that you understood everything which we discussed, and at the same time you liked the story very well, because it is all about children of your age and how they managed to find out a thief. So you would have loved the story. Anyway, we are going to wind up. I think this is time to wind up. Anyway, thank you. Have a nice day.